45 US billion dollars. That's the amount generated by the retailing sector between the 3rd of June 2021 and the 1st of July 2022. So, welcome to today's Global Retailing 2023 podcast, where we will be through a Deloitte research on this same sector and topic. What can you expect? Could you be asking right now? What is this about? Well, we will be going through the topics, the trends, the challenges, and all of the companies involved, the top 250 companies that this whole report is comprehend of. A huge list of companies from every part of the world, going through Europe, America, Latin America. How are things looking? What is the technology looking like for this sector as of the futures goes? How is sustainability monitoring and working right now? Because that's super important as of 2023. And overall, what can we learn? What can we see to not only stay on top of the track, on top of the trends, but ahead of the curve, ahead of competitors and ahead of everything that is coming? So whether you are a professional working on this sector for many, many years, an entrepreneur thinking on jumping right into, or just a passionate like me that just love listening and learning to these topics, stay tuned to today's podcast because it's going to be amazing. We're going to be going through a lot of different topics, as I just said, and the most important things, examples of today's world backed up by research and science. So let's go.
To whom it may concern, welcome to Common Sense, your safe haven. If anyone is listening, please keep in mind that we are together on this journey. This will always be your safe place to share your ideas, your thoughts, your comments, anything. So before we jump right back into the podcast, I have one simple question that I would like to ask you. What would you like to start with?
So, as I always like to say, welcome once again. I wouldn't stop repeating it over and over again. We have ahead of us a long journey of retailing, journey that we will be working together and seeing many, many topics. So sit down, relax, and let's learn all together because that is all about. Let's begin with some quick statistics to position ourselves in how are things looking. I gave you a number just to begin with, just to have that initial impression, but there is a lot more than just 45 billion of US dollars. Yes, that's the amount that the top 250 retailers generated during the 30th of June 2021, 1st of July 2022, so a whole year. And financially, what this actually means is we are looking at financial year. Okay, years goes from the 1st of January to 31 of December, but for companies, things work a bit different. So we are taking financial years based on this criteria. So based on that, we see that the year-on-year revenue is 45 billion. The average revenue, okay, for retail, the average, not what we got, is 22.6 billion, and the maximum, which is the forecast, is around 572 billion. Okay, that's the maximum. We are just in the top 250, and then we have the maximum. So that's the variable we are working with. Quite big numbers. Not actually giving much information, just to impress us, to cast some initial concoction in our brain. But let's see how these big numbers split into categories and into more comprehensible topics for each one of us. Let's go into categories, because categories are what are we actually used to working or seeing on a daily basis. We have four main categories. Apparel and accessories, that's around 31%, okay, of that spectrum of revenue that we mentioned before, 31. So apparel and accessories, best one. Diversified, 15%, okay, we have there. Diversification, nice and handily. Then hardlines and leisure goods, 9%, and FMCG at 5%. So that's the scale, and then the rest, the others are the remaining percent. But on these key statistics, we are seeing a tendency not on the categories, but on sustainability that I mentioned. 73% of the customers have increased investing their investment in sustainable companies over the last years. So the programs and the companies getting into this new segment are going great, working and moving forward. And we are seeing improvements on stores to stay tuned and to stay on track of technology, implementing artificial intelligence, experimental zones, VR, virtual reality, etc., etc., etc. So things are looking good. Retailing has some nice margins of benefits, but let's dive deep into the topic. Economy is so-so, or that's what we're seeing. In 2023, due to the post-pandemic and the recent economic recent wars, we have a rehearsal on the economy. Economy stopped growing as fast, and now we are getting to a point on mid-2023, quarter two, of stabilization. Okay, some economies, some events, things are starting to not get back to normal, but stabilize and not rise into worse or worsen even more. So, despite these factors, we still have some high inflation. High inflation is a thing. Prices, especially those commodity prices, has increased, and the supply chain has problems in delivering in date. So we have a disruption on those areas. However, we have the other side of the story. There are trends that did not only started but are persisting, such as the tight labor markets, the conflict of Europe, the slowdown of the China economy. Those things that started are still there, haven't left. So we see some gives and takes on the economy. Okay, then we have sanctions, then the constant rivalry between US and China labor market. So what seems to be for granted is that the upcoming years are likely to be a combination of continuous changes, especially in politics, but also in economical and in our base. But inflation, once it recedes, once it get back to normal, and we drop the inflation of those years back to 2020, 2021, the supply chain disruption get back to normals, and those commodity prices lower just enough that we can liberate the fiscality and the monetary policy, and people can actually start spending more, is where we need to be aware of, so we can actually start seeing how the markets behave, especially retailing. That is what we are actually commenting right now. Okay. Despite this rapid decline and economy shifting and changing in places, how are things economically looking for 2023 and the future years, especially in Europe, China, Japan, India, those countries that are a bit more unsure of the situation, because US could not be leading the industry as it has always done, but will be there. Europe will keep, or this is what experts are predicting on economically, experiencing the recession due to the wages, the energy pandemic, like the energy crisis and the pandemic. So Western nations will still be in decline. Japan economy, in contrast, is going to stabilize. The growth will be modest, nothing crazy, and mainly because of the weakened global economy. Okay, India is the big hit here, because everything I'm seeing is pointing out to India. India seems the one taking now the lead in growth, and demographic plays a big role, and they are growing. They have a high demand, and they have affordable now importing oil, exporting oil, things like that. the lowering trades of the regulations are benefiting them, so are looking great. And China will be in concentration because it's still in conflict with the war and the US. So China, big question mark. And the big thing about talking about this outlook of economics is because one important element is comprehend on this, that is the supply chains. We said that there is a disruptions and economy is greatly hit by that disruption in the supply chains and in how we actually deliver the goods. Because yes, you could be an expert on the industry or not, but we all have to give for granted that we need things from other countries. We need to export, we need to import. We are not 100% autonomous in terms of producing in the retaining world. And most of the things are manufactured in one country, assembled in other, delivered to yours. So there are things there. And if we are actually affecting or having problems in the supply chains of how things are delivered, this increases the weakening on demand because we will not be able to satisfy demand. So once demand is not being able to satisfy, there is scarcity, and that scarcity is what brings prices up even more than inflation is causing due to the crisis. So until we stabilize China situation with war, with the effect of pandemic, with tensions between countries, the labor markets get back to normal, recover the full working capability, and primal goods like oil, wheat, those things start getting back in track, things will be recovered. But this for sure will be a long process, a boring one, and super tedious, and no doubt that it will take time to get to the situation that we were before. And that's a big thing to consider if we start seeing economies and start seeing companies, especially companies, not growing as much as fast or even declining overall, especially those in problems. Now that we cover most of the global economic outlook, we have many more topics like the US recession that is slightly avoided, but within a doubt, the growth of US is going to be much lower than previous years until this recession and banks start being so tight in credit score. The growth of India could really benefit us or harm other economies. So that's a thing to be aware of. And overall, we need to, if we like it or not, we need to wait for China recovery to rebound and get their modesty in track, okay? Because even though pandemic and crisis are relaxing, we are still not as we were before it. So markets will take a long time to be back to a level that we can actually start predicting with confidence of how things will look for the future, okay? So that's the economic outlook. This is quite boring, quite tedious, quite tough, but important to comprehend what is ahead of us. Now, the fun part. What are the top 10 highlights of global retailing in 2023? Well, companies listed are number one, surprising or not, Walmart, the big blue giant leading the board. Second, Amazon.com, okay? Third one is Costco, the whole corporation. Fourth one is Schwartz, the group. Fifth one is Home Depot. This is a building company for accessories of all around the world. Kroger, JD, the sneakers company, is number 6 for the review. Then we have Aliens, the safety, Aldi, and then Target Corporation, number 10. Okay. The top 10 share, those top 10 companies that I mentioned, comprehend a 34% of the total revenue of the 250. Okay, So a 34% of revenue is just the top 10 companies. And then we have the remaining 66% comprehending the remaining ones. Okay, so out of the 45 minimum US billion dollars that we get in revenue, 34%, which is around 12 or so, more than like 25%. No, 30s, 30s. So 30% is like, yeah, 45, 12, 30 million dollars, billion dollars are just made by the top 10 companies alone. So big numbers that just 10 companies comprehend a 34% of the total one. And year-on-year growth, obviously, we see that Amazon has decreased substantially more than any of the others, but this is because due to the pandemic, their numbers were super inflated because they were the only ones selling as of companies could not open doors. So what we see is most of the companies are growing less because we are also in a recession, but the one who declined the most year-on-year growth is without a doubt Amazon, okay? Because of the accentuated effect of pandemic that has in the company. If we actually want to read a bit more about companies, something about Walmart. We know Walmart, the big blue, is in every corner in the US market, in some Central America countries. But what is actually super interesting is that it started to compete on e-commerce with others. Like the sales grew by 12%, 12% year on year following the pandemic. So online distribution for Walmart is going great. We have some other things like the Amazon launching stores and expanding, especially in Poland, Belgium, and starting to get more marketplaces. But those are just pure statistical numbers about growth, about the company. If you want to actually deep diver into these numbers, you will have the own research by Deloitte to look at. But I don't want to spend a lot more time looking through each one of the top 10. What is actually interesting is looking comparatively, how are things looking between the top 10, top 200, and the rest of the competitors for all of us. Next is the versus top 10 versus top 200. We see some numbers already. The growth is looking nice, 6% of the top 200, but the top 10 grew 8%. So as everything is in life, the elite of retailing is growing faster, more than the basement of them. And we are actually looking at the top 250, which is a big, substantial part of it. But of the retailers, 70% are located in the USA. These are big numbers. So 7 out of 10 are in the USA, and out of the 250, more of the same value. That constitute a lot for big firms to work on and operate. They operate where it's easier, when taxes, when barriers to exporting, where having access to working with different suppliers are easier, and that's on the United States without a doubt. Instead of revenue, JD, the sneaker company, was the fastest one growing in the top 10, and then it's led by Amazon and Home Depot, which surprisingly, all the omni-channel strategy and the effects of their campaigns boost their performance substantially to position them on this podium that we're seeing. And then think we could be talking about net profit margin, how operations, and the revenue in 5 years, the return on offsets, all of those things are working. But this super technical data will only make us more confused, and that's not give us a full perspective or anything useful, at least not for me. It's easy to understand. We're seeing numbers, But what all of this means, it does retailing post-pandemic is slowly but surely moving forward, growing less than previous years, but being stable, even though economic outlook is not that positive. So that's what we need to get out of all of this information. But you have the whole report in the description for you to read. Now, what's next? Well, we need to move forward. And the way forward for companies in retailing is sustainability. Sustainability is one of the top 3 consumer problems that are indicated on Deloitte research. So what companies are actually accounting for is that sustainability to produce and to benefit and avoid as much as possible the climate change. So how are we facing, or how those companies are facing the issue of the climate change, being especially a top 3 priority for consumers, considering any strategy moving forward. We need to be both sustainable and have practices that benefit and respect these issues. And we also need to start implementing technology, having tracking, and having a persistent strategy on this specific target. In this framework of action, Deloitte found the following. 54% of executives surveyed has increased the investment in sustainability over the last year, okay? 19% of those, they identify the climate change as an issue, and then 45 of the respondents are already working on the operational to make a habit of change. Okay? Actions taken on these companies that we are seeing today, retailers, 64% of them are using more sustainable materials. Big news there. Lower emissions, less plastic, less CO2, C2O is better air and better overall global benefits, 59%. The efficiency of energy use, this is mainly backed up by technology. Using the energy, not only increasing the efficiency of energy, but using that energy more efficient in the actual tasks that are needed is the third one, 53%. And then lastly, they are developing themselves products related or in relation with climate change. So they are actually in favor or working towards that and training employees towards developing actions that affect that climate change. But what are those are the actions taken, but we also have things that are hard to implement. What are those difficult steps? What are people seeing that are difficult and faster adoption? First one, developing products. It's hard to develop product that has to consider the climate change, that has to benefit it both. It's hard to have suppliers and supply chains and business partners that also match your criteria. It's not only the company willingness to be sustainable, but also their providers, their suppliers that are bringing them the materials. Updating, relocating, changing things when needed, and actually adapting everything to climate change is also hard. But the harder one is tying seniors, so top tiers executives in company, to actually compensate the sustainable performance of a company. So even though the base of the company wants to work towards sustainability, there is no reward and there is no incentive by the top seniors to actually facilitate any of that whatsoever. And this is in big letters, perjudicial, not for the company, but for everyone in the world. And here we have a few points. The first point is the resale. Okay, one of the easiest or first ways that companies found to increase sustainability in retailing is reselling. What is so fantastic about reselling is that you already made the effort of producing something. Now you are making the options that rather than discarding that product, you are gonna reuse it, give it a second option, lower its first high price, and while being first hand, offer a good product with good added value with a lower price, but benefiting the ecosystem by not keep making and making and making more product. This is also a rising tendency because of the increase on commodity prices. If you can obtain something at a lower price, that is both beneficial to the ecosystem and also to your own economy, the buyback options are starting to get more appealing to customers. So Amazon Warehouse, for example, offer those kind of deals to first-handed product with high conditions but at lower prices. The models. What models? There are 3 models used in reselling as of today. And I have it in front of me. The first model is selling back to the retailer. Producers sell, get it back, and resell it to the own retailers. Peer-to-peer, what it's called. So I produce something, I'm not going to be able to use it. I sell it to another retailer, and that retailer may do something with my product. First technique, okay? Instead of selling directly to consumers, you sell to resellers and to their retailers. Sorry. Second one, optimizing logistics. So logistics and stuff, so that you can actually authenticate those products that could be resell. So if you have received a product and you know that right now, 8:30 in the morning, you receive an iPhone that someone gave us to you or sent to you, and customer B is looking for an iPhone, is doubly doing it because of the price and some conditions. You can actually resell what you actually have received, actually informing them. So it's like, it's not I'm only getting this product back to my shop, but instead of storing it, and who knows what will happen to this second-hand product or first-hand slightly used, I know that I have this thing and I know how to translate it to a new customer and make a new sales based on this sustainable approach. And the third one, which is likely to be the future moving forward for any retail model, is controlling the resale channel. So it's not only having one-time sales, but 2 times, second time, third time, fourth time. So you try to sell, you can, or you do, you receive it back, and then you retry to sell it 8 days after, 6 months after, a year after. It's building a whole channel around reselling, knowing and giving the customer the expectations, becoming more sustainable and also more close to the consumer. Okay? So those are the 3 models in resale. And this strategy of reselling is combined with these sustainable supply chains. Because now that we have this uncertainty and this disruption on supply chains, and knowing for a fact, and this is data by the World Business Council, that 25% of the pollution worldwide is due to supply chains. What companies are trying to do is make a traceability of the fruit products, of the materials used, of everything, and launch initiative to be as efficient as possible on each one of the process. This may end up causing timings to delay, but we are actually managed to reduce those delays to the minimum, but increase sustainability 10 times more than we are actually doing right now. This new way of construction, this supply chain, could be beneficial to reduce emissions, regulate the system, and be more sustainable at the end. Okay. For this are all sort of science-based software as services tools, monitoring processes, and initiatives that are growing day by day. If you are seeing some of the more entrepreneurial ideas as of conference today, everything is based on sustainability in retailing, and this is one of the key facts that you could be trying to mess around with, that is supply chains. And lastly is technology. Trends normally start with technology, and I am already giving you a hint on my last point. And sustainability, progress, and technology are literally a one pack for any company today. Artificial intelligence, blockchains, and supply chain operations are working together to interlace or to interconnect those bonds. What we can actually start seeing, or we could actually develop, is a blockchains that enable a closed loop on the supply chains that reduce the waste substantially. You optimize the forecasting. Okay, if we have artificial intelligence that is able to predict when an order is going to be taken, you will be able to predict at what moment should every machine turn on to be as more efficient as possible, to calibrate how the deliverable should be, and to optimize the timing, so you know that from second one to the last one, the things are going to be 100% smooth. And this is a combination blockchains, artificial intelligence, and supply chains, all three together. For this to happen, we need one, a lot of years, and second, platforms that interconnect these kind of things. I have two examples in front of me. First one is Amazon. Easy. Amazon is always keen on this kind of advancement, and the one that we should look to replicate in the future. They launched a grade and resell program in the UK. This enables third-party sellers to resell products that have been returned to them. So if you're a third-party seller, you get a product return. Amazon allows you to resell the product, and the conditions, I was saying, was new, very good, good, or acceptable. This is what ended up being the Amazon warehouse. These programs that were developed and that now are not only from Amazon but for third-party resellers, once they start shipping to USA, Europe, China, India, more and more and more will, instead of buying the first handmade product, will get the second one, being more sustainable overall. So we will be balancing each other out. And the second one, which is more interesting than the Amazon one, is the Colruyt Group. Okay, this Belgian retailer introduced a loyalty program that's sustainable. Okay, so sustainability was the key thing of this loyalty program. The consumers will get rewards if they make sustainably related credits, and by the actual way of accumulating those coins is they having the app, what was called Extra, and they purchase food or other product from the company's eco score. So the company developed an app that has an eco score, and if you get products from the eco score that was anything between A or B, you would get points, and those points would be redeemed not for prices, but for planting trees, but for having sustainable actions around the landscape, but making initiatives to launch campaigns to reduce waste, etc., etc., etc. So the price was something completely towards the environment and not anything monetary. So how can we be ahead of the curve and having one foot in the present and the second one right in the future? We need to integrate technology as the key element for us in retailing. Make convenience stores as automatic as possible so we can gather as much data as we can. Personalize the processes, make recommendations, make streamlines and stream pipes about how things are. Tree diagrams and algorithms are key. If you manage to get an engineer to develop a whole system of automations for your stores for data, you will be able to predict like crazy how things will be looking 1 day, 2 days, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year ahead of you. And if you have an option and an opportunity, get yourself in the metaverse, design stores, design product, make the 3D models. There are super easy ways, and get yourself in there. So once we can start seeing connections between platforms and programs, that from the scan QR barcode to having a 3D model in the store, the implementation of technology is crucial, and these are key elements for us. Okay, the advances of technology are huge and they progress so fast. So it's all about enhancing the experience and gathering as much data as possible and centralizing services. So once that we can, this transform into more revenue, more sustainability, and overall a future world that looks better than currently is. And then, just to end up, if you want to start in retailing, you don't know how, you know how over massified this sector is. Consider that the top 10, 7 out of the top 10 are in the USA, so you may have chances elsewhere. The US market is maybe harder. India is a interesting niche of opportunity that is not a niche because it's so big that you have an insane amount of target audience there. That apparel and accessories tend to predominate the markets, then FMCG, which is any shopping grocery. Hardlines and leisure goods are or tend to be to the expensive side of objects, so you can actually make a top strategy like targeting towards the higher income, higher prices on this sector. And if you want to go diversify, then definitely there are some spaces for you on markets like China, Japan, or India overall. This is a bit of the coverage of this Deloitte report. It's super extensive, it's super complicated because we see a lot of year-over-year revenues, accounting, interest, rates of benefit, rates of money, and how companies, each one are positioned based on mathematical calculus on all of those, how they grow Q1, how many stores they grow, all of this information that is super beneficial for professionals inside the sectors, but for the 99% of us, it's not as useful. It's just having the understanding, the outcome, and the overall idea that covers this market. So I'm not gonna go any more crazy on today. I think we seen enough, and we actually have a great chat. So now it's up to you to choose where you want to start, how you want to start, make questions, deep dive into the report, ask me anything, or explore by yourself. So for today, I'll leave it here. As always, thank you for assisting and coming, and I'll see you on the next one.